Back to order, please. The first item on the agenda is to go out of closed meeting. Do I have a motion, please?
So moved, Mr. Chair. Second.
Been moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Mr. Craig?
Aye.
Ms. Perkins? Aye. Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mr. Tuck?
Aye.
Mr. Gabriel?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman?
Aye.
We have all ayes. I'll close the meeting.
The next item is to certification of the closed meeting. Whereas the Board of Supervisors of Montgomery County has convened in a closed meeting on the date pursuant to the affirmative recorded vote and in accordance with the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, and whereas Section 2.2-3711 of the Virginia Code requires that a certification by the Board that such closed meeting was conducted in conformity with Virginia law. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Supervisors of Montgomery County, Virginia, hereby certifies that to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements by Virginia law were discussed in the closed meeting to which this certification resolution applies, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion conveying the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered by the Board. Do I have a motion, please?
So moved, Mr. Chair. Second.
Been moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Mr. Gabriel?
Aye.
Mr. Tuck?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Ms. Perkins? Aye. Mr. Craig?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman?
Aye.
We have all ayes. Closed meeting certified.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is our invocation, and if you'll please rise and take a moment to consider the business we have before us, and following that will be the Pledge of Allegiance by Mr. Meadows.
Let us pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much.
Okay, the next item is a special evening this evening, for the Wells family. I would like to ask the board members and the county administrator and the family members of M.L. Pug Wells to join me at the chair in the boardroom where Pug Wells spent many nights attending our meetings. safety, there's many other
Excuse me.
And now Mr. Meadows will invite our new tourism director to the podium and introduce her.
Absolutely. I wanted to introduce to you Miss Lisa Bleakley. Lisa is going to be starting with us on September the 4th. But she just happened to be in town today, and I said, well, since you just happened to be in town, you're going to need to stick around until about 7:15 tonight. So I wanted to have the opportunity to let you see Lisa, so you'll know when you see her running all over the county in about a month or so what she's up to. And Lisa, if you'd just briefly just share with the board who you are and where you're from and why you're here.
Well, good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Thank you for affording me the opportunity to stop in and say hello tonight. And especially thank you for the opportunity to allow me to assist you in tourism initiatives here in Montgomery County. I'm really excited about it. I've been in Virginia Beach, compliments of Uncle Sam, for the last 17 years, working in the Convention and Visitor Bureau there with their special events department, and more recently, the last 6 years in our new convention center. I was born in Henry County, raised just over the line in Eden, North Carolina, so it's like a homecoming of sorts to me to be back out in the western part of the state. I have a husband and 2 sons that are in Virginia Beach now, and they'll remain there for a while I get here and get situated. And the youngest son has 1 more year to go in high school, and he spent a lot of the summer in football, so he's all eager and ready to do his varsity senior year out there. So, but I'm here and excited to hit the ground come September 4th and open up to any questions you may have about me, and we'll be around at any time in the future to answer any questions.
Any questions of anybody?
Thank you for coming out tonight.
Thank you for being here, Lisa.
Welcome.
Welcome
That's right. Welcome.
Thank you.
to our county.
Thanks,
Thank you.
thanks, Lisa.
Good to be here.
The next item is a delegation, the Virginia Department of Transportation, Mr. David Clark. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. It's been a little while since I've been before the board. We're basically doing most of our normal, we're trying to do most of our normal summer maintenance. We had a little disturbance in that with the storms that came through. It took quite a while to get cleaned up. We're about done with that. Getting debris out of the road, first of all, and then clearing it off the shoulders and everything after that. We are heavily into our resurfacing schedules. Most significantly, probably the most mileage we have is in surface treatment. So that's your basic tar and gravel type of paving. So we've been getting a few calls on that because we haven't done quite as much of that in the past. We're doing a lot more now just because we don't have the money to do a lot of plant mix roads. So we've been fielding calls. Mostly they've been pretty good calls, just about, wanting to know what's going on. We're using a different type of treatment. It's got some more smaller stone in it. That actually works a lot better at keeping tar from spreading around. So I know we've done some down in the Ellison area. We've done some up in the Blacksburg area. We're moving out in the McCoy area. We'll be doing a lot all around. About 613 Blue Springs Road Bridge is, of course, still underway. That'll be quite a while before it's done, another year before it's done. One of the things we're thinking about doing, and I'd just like to inform the board, the south side of that bridge, since the bridge is out at Blue Springs, they have to detour through Pulaski County and come around across 693 bridge. There's about 2/10 of a mile of that detour that's unpaved. I'd like to surface treat that just because it's going to be a maintenance issue over the winter. There's a lot more traffic on it. Just wanted to let the board know that I might be doing that. Which won't be any grading work and ditching work. Might have to replace a pipe, but it's just about 2/10 of a mile is all there is of unpaved road that we'll be doing. We'd like to get that surface treated so we don't have to have a continuous maintenance problem and can be inconvenience for those people that have to go that way to get out now that that bridge is closed. Our 609 Willis Hollow project is, for the most part, done. We're going to put another coat on that as soon as we get the contractor back in there. But I think it turned out real well. And we should be starting on the bridge there at the Sissons on 637 here pretty soon. Another thing that you may have been hearing about, or we had calls on, was that I think the survey work was done, but they were doing some survey work around 81, the areas surrounding. And it's actually quite a large area that they do the survey work, much larger than will be impacted. The Route 8 bridges over, or 81 bridges over Route 8. We've got a project to replace those bridges. It's still several years away. There's still a public hearing to be had. What they're doing right now is just gathering survey information from the surrounding area. We've had to go into neighborhoods, Ridgewood, areas back behind on the Christiansburg side. People have been kind of wondering, what kind of project, if you're surveying my street, you're going to take our street or anything. It's nothing like that. They're going to confine us to the bridges. Hopefully, maybe try to improve the interchange. But right now, that's we're still really just trying to get the scope of that to see what we did. I know some work needs to be done to make that whole interchange work a lot better. But right now, the bridges are our main concern. So we're going to be working on designing the bridges and maybe trying to do a little bit something to the interchange. But again, there'll be a public hearing, an opportunity for the county to have input on that project when it comes up. Other than that, that's all I've got, unless the board has any other questions.
Any questions, board members?
No questions. Just a comment. And I don't know whether this is in your bailiwick or not, but a gentleman by the name of Mike came before this board probably in March and requested a sign on the interstate, something about Christiansburg. I don't know the particular details in the sign, but I run across him today and he says, "Hey Chief, when are you going to put my sign up?" My letter said it'd be put up in May, because I remember getting a copy of the letter, but I can't remember the particulars.
It was the one for the hotel.
It was one that indicated that you could, it has to do with exit 118A and still being able to get to Christiansburg and Blacksburg off of 118A instead of B and C. But and I'd forgotten about that. I do remember we got a letter saying it was going to be done.
Forgot about it too, and
but I don't know.
Asked me today about, say, hey, when y'all guys can put my sign up? And I said, no, we don't put the sign up. VDOT put the sign up, But I told him I would inquire about it.
Because there are federal, guidelines for putting up destination signs on the interstate.
But this letter came from VDOT
Okay, I haven't seen.
I think it came out of Salem district or somewhere.
Yeah,
Not
we did,
mistaken.
yeah, because it came up at a meeting, and then, I can't remember, it didn't come from you, but it came from
Right.
somebody at VDOT saying they had looked into it and agreed that there needed to be
Right.
additional signage, and
But his name, it was,
one of the hotel owners.
Mr. Patel. Yeah,
We'll-
can't think of his name.
Yeah, I'll get Judy.
Okay.
We'll find the letter too and copy, make sure you
That
get.
reminds me of something else that you had sent me, that we're working on some signs on 460 at the Blacksburg Montgomery County line. We're
Thank you.
getting those done, as
Thank
well
you.
as some better signage at Route 8 going south out of Christiansburg.
Yeah, where everybody tries to
Yes,
merge at the same
Those are
time.
going to be done too.
Yeah.
So I just want to let you know, I got those, they're being
Thank
worked
you,
on.
thank you, David.
I just have one question. Is all of the surface treated roads using the different type gravel now?
Yeah. It's a different mix. Used to just put number 8 stone on there. Now it's a mix of 8s and 10s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I'm sure you know I've had a couple calls out of Elliston,
Right.
and they were hauling that was putting Crusher Run on it.
Yeah.
I went down the road and it was doing look like what it's supposed to do, but it's just something that I wanted to make sure that everybody was doing.
Oh yeah. I think it's a much better product. You don't get the sound of it clicking up against the car like you used to. I think
Right,
it
it
works
seemed
really
to
well.
have covered it
Yeah.
very well, and
It just takes some time for some traffic to get on it for it to work well.
I can point him at other roads who get
Oh
the
yeah.
same thing.
Yes.
actually.
Yeah.
Okay.
I got one question in regards to 114 or Pepper Ferry Road going towards Christiansburg. Is there going to be a right-hand turn lane there at Majestic on the expansion? Are you aware of that?
I'm not sure. I'll have to look and see.
If you wouldn't mind just sending me an email, someone asked me that question. Thank you.
A lot of rear enders there if there's not.
Yes, there's a lot of accidents, and Majestic now has become a quick cut through to go back towards.
Right. And I don't think when that project was designed that was the case.
That's the reason someone asked that question,
Yeah.
and they were wondering if it was going to be, because it is used on a regular basis. A great deal of traffic comes out there.
That's how I know where it is.
Okay, and I have one question.
Okay.
Is there a way we can get a sign on 81 coming off the 114 ramp directing to Reiner? It just shows Christiansburg and Floyd.
I'll tell you. I'll say it would be not on 81 itself, but down at the ramp.
Well, we've got
When
it
you get
down at
off
the
the
end of the
ramp, it
ramp,
says,
but people don't know on 81 where to go to Reiner because it's not mentioned. Reiner's got schools now, it's got post office, you know.
So you want to sign on 81?
On 81 with the Floyd Christiansburg,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, people don't know
exit.
that that's where it is.
I can certainly ask.
Please. And that's all I've got.
All right. Thank you all very much.
Thank you,
Thank you,
David.
David.
The next item on the agenda is a public hearing. The following public hearing was advertised pursuant to law in the Bergs section of the Roanoke Times on July 18th, 2012. Montgomery County becoming a member of the Blacksburg-Christiansburg VPI Water Authority. And I'll turn this over to Mr. Meadows.
Well, I'm gonna,
Or-
you wanna,
I'll say a couple words. The purpose of this public hearing is to receive citizen comments on Montgomery County becoming a member of the Blacksburg-Christiansburg VPI Water Authority. Under state law, before a locality can join any authority, that locality has to hold a public hearing, as does all the current members of the authority. So Blacksburg and Christiansburg will be holding their own public hearings on the same matter. In order for the county to join, they have to agree to a joinder agreement, which will be between all the current members and the current water authority and the county. Once the county joins, the water authority will change its name from Blacksburg Christiansburg VPI Water Authority with all the members of the Water Authority and with the Water Authority itself. PSA would also be a signing entity to that agreement. The joinder will be finalized once all the parties hold the public hearings and the agreements are all signed, and then articles of incorporation, amended articles of incorporation forming the new authority and as a member will then be sent to Virginia SCC, and then once they approve that, which is just paperwork, the county will be a full member, full voting member of the authority. Mr. DeSalvo's here. He's the engineer who's been in charge of putting together the new authority from an engineering standpoint. So he's here to answer any questions if you have from an engineering standpoint. And if you have any questions and we have any agreements, I think we can deal with those as well.
And does anybody have any questions?
Whenever we get through, I got several questions, but not just on HIP, so.
Okay.
Public hearing.
I'll save mine to after you have the others.
Okay.
Did you open the public hearing?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
There is nobody signed up for this public hearing, but if there's anybody who wishes to speak to this public hearing, please step forward, say your name and address, and you have 5 minutes. Seeing no one, we will come back to our board and see if anybody's got any questions. Mr.
Yeah, I
Creed.
don't necessarily have as questions as I do statements, because I just want to make sure that all the public understands kind of what they're getting into, especially the people who are at the present time buying water from the PSA. Water right now is $6 or something per 1,000 gallons. 10 years down the road, if we join this water authority, we're looking at $28 per 1,000 gallons. An increase of what, sixfold? I don't know what the percentage is on that, but it's 600% or something. I don't know. It's something that folks really need to know what's going to happen and have some idea of how much money that it's going to really cost the people in Montgomery County who are on PSA water. It has nothing to do with the towns. It is only to do with the county. We only have just a little less than 30,000 people that will be involved in paying for the water. Matter of fact, in paying for the water for the completion of all the infrastructure of water for the rest of the county. Those 700 people are going to be responsible for doing that, and we're taking that as a burden upon us to say that's what y'all are going to do. They don't have a choice. They haven't been asked if they want to do it. They just are told this is what the water rate is now. Here's how much it's going to be going up, and within 10 years' time, this is what you're going to be paying for 1,000 gallons of water, which is, like I say, 6 times as much at least as what they're paying, maybe a little more than that. And that is something that I'm not sure there's ever been told or let the common person who is out here getting water from our PSA, I don't think they have been notified correctly in order to make a just decision on what they would like to do or what they would like not to do. So to me, there's some I don't know that I have anything other than that to say, other than people need to be informed. And I don't think that was properly done.
Mr. Brown?
Mr. Creed, I really appreciate your comments and I appreciate you bringing that to the forefront. But when you, and I think what you're saying is worst case scenario, I think that in 10 years, the customer base for the Public Service Authority will grow. And that may not be the worst case scenario. I think in 10 years, with the number of the projects that's laying out there, the customer base would be much broader, and it means that the cost in water probably will not go up to what you're saying. But if the base stays the same, what Mr. Creed is saying is the worst case scenario there. So when you look at that, because there's a number of developments that's out there, I'm sure, that's going to add 300 and 400 customers to the base, and that's not going to shoot it up as high as he said. I don't want the PSA customers to panic by listening to that statement. I think what he's saying is true. Worst case scenario, if the customer base don't grow, so that may be true.
Actually, I understated it.
You understand?
I understated it.
Okay.
That is the authority's numbers, not ours.
Okay.
That's what the authority says we're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
And we may do, it may be quite a bit more than that, because that doesn't include any
Infrastructure?
That doesn't include any raise for PSA maintenance and things on it. So it's going to be more than that, not less. So, you know, it's something you need to take a look at.
In my mind, looking at the authority, are there risks involved? Yes, but we need to look at how we're going to be able to grow in the county. And to me, we need a reliable water source. We just need to look to the Midwest, and you start hearing about people's wells going dry. And we do have, you know, we've got, at this point in time, a reliable water source coming out of the arsenal. But we do have several of our systems that are on wells. And we have the New River. And joining the authority is going to allow us to be able to tap into that. I think about what Bill is saying. When that transmission line runs through Vicar, it sounds like that's the direction it's going. We're going to be able to tap into that. Those are going to be our customers. And so the folks that build onto there and we that hook onto, those become our customers and will help lower the price for the rest. Because, you know, the more people that buy, the lower the costs that we're going to have. But we have a county that's growing, you know, 10,000 people roughly, or 1,000 people a year. If we continue this type of growth, they're going to have a reliable water source. The other thing that in the back of my mind is, as my understanding is, the Arsenal and Homeland Security, and we don't know what aspects of that water. We believe that we're going to continue to be able to buy the water there, but if we had some kind of national crisis, manufacturing had to pick up there, I don't know that we would be able to do that. So those are the factors that are going in my mind. I am concerned about the water rates and water increases, but I think that we have to look for the long-term growth of this county.
You know, I might state that, because I don't want to be the only rebuttal for any of this, because this has been brought up in our closed meetings, that we do have alternatives. We've got a Radford with a big water supply could give us more than we would ever need. We've got also Pulaski water that could give us more. Either one of those could give us more than we need. Would it be something that would be better than what we're getting? I do not know. But I'm telling you that people have the right to know. And I assure you that the majority, at least, of the people who are going to be paying, the ones that are in this less than 3,000 of the county, know nothing about it. Have absolutely no qualm. And when it hits them, that's what it's going to be, I don't know what some of them are going to do. Some of them are, I mean, we got some people out there that don't have any money. Some of our poorest people in this county are on PSA water. Matter of fact, the majority of our poorest people in Montgomery County are on PSA water. Now, when you get a majority of a people that you're automatically going to have a tenfold raise or more, then you need to look at it. You need to look at it real carefully, and you don't need to just pass off everything that the idea that has come up and say this is what we've got to do. I didn't know a whole lot about it until we met this past week, because it's been something that none of us got a copy of along the way as it was negotiated. So, you know, this was something that we have not taken a real good look at. It's been rushed through us. Now it's going to be supposedly rushed through this, and it will be passed, and the passing of it will put a burden on people who I don't think can afford it.
When you say rush through, but you know, my Uncle Ira was on the board, I guess, before everybody else here was.
Yeah, your Uncle Ira said he could make the water better than God, and I don't believe that.
But I mean, they were talking about joinder then, when he first started. So I don't know that it's maybe this agreement might be coming through quickly, but joinder is something that this county's been looking at for decades.
Well, it's hard to say that this has been rushed through since we've been negotiating this for well over a year, 2 years, probably, something like that. We're not voting on it tonight. This is only our public hearing. We haven't even scheduled a vote on the joint. The towns haven't even scheduled their public hearings, to my understanding. I mean, VPI passed it. I mean, so there's a lot of time to talk about this. I wanted to ask a point of clarification, if I could, perhaps to Marty, is that Mr. Creed is very concerned about prices. Is there anything in the joinder agreement, and in my readings, I think I know the answer to this, but I want to just be sure. Is there anything about that how are water prices determined? Now, we'll be mandated to buy water directly from the authority.
Right.
But how are those prices determined on the price that we would pay?
I think Jerry Higgins would probably be the better one. He's the director of the Water Authority presently. The Water Authority has an agreement with all the members to sell water to them, and they set the price, I assume, based on the costs. Jerry Higgins.
I'm afraid I didn't hear the last part of that.
I would just like to know, I know that were Montgomery County to join the authority, we would be required to buy our water from the authority.
Okay.
But I'm just curious about the mechanisms for how the prices for that sale are determined within the authority.
At cost, essentially.
Okay.
We do have a financial plan that goes forward approximately 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
And for instance, right now, the cost of water to all of our members is the same cost. It's $1.81 and $1.81 per 1,000 gallons. And then, of course, the county and the PSA add on to that their cost. But for instance, 10 years from now, our financial plan shows that our cost of water will go up to
$3.35
and 38 cents. I'm sorry, I can't read that.
I think it's 35. I've got it in front
I
of
think
me.
you're right. It's 35. My eyesight is not as good as it used to be. 35 is exactly right. $3.35 in 10 years.
Okay, so $1.50, roughly $1.50.
Right. And everybody would pay the same price.
Yeah. Okay, so this is a price that affects Blacksburg, Christiansburg,
Yes.
VPI as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's all I have.
Yeah, that's just not the figures that I think was Mr. Frank actually gave us on his workup of what cost of water would be. I don't know whether he'd want to speak to that or not, but that'd be up to him. Certainly would
Just
welcome.
ballpark, roughly, what are, I don't live in the town, so I don't know what the town water costs in Blacksburg, Christiansburg. Do you know what the authority members are roughly selling it per 1,000 gallons to residential customers? Ballpark, I'm not.
Ballpark be between $3 and $4.
Okay.
Ballpark. And please don't hold me to it, but that's going to be a ballpark.
And that's covered their distribution lines, their costs, similar to what the PSA would have to do.
Correct.
And Also, I got a thing from Craig a couple weeks ago that the out-of-town rate for Christiansburg is $6.90. And I believe that includes anybody within that half a mile perimeter.
It's like 100, I think they charge 150% of their in-town rate for out-of-town.
Out-of-town rate.
And I think it's similar for town of Blacksburg.
Okay. So we have that to consider.
And that's roughly, that's what we're charging
It's
right now.
comparable.
right?
We're
That's what
close to
charging.
that.
It's close to it, yeah.
And they charge a minimum of 4,000 gallons if I'm,
I think that's right.
Hmm.
I think that's right.
which we have a lot of people who do a lot less than that. The other thing is some of this structure, and correct me if I'm wrong, is going to be paid by the developer itself. We require that in new developments. So I'm not sure that all that cost is going to be passed on. I mean, the cost will, but I'm not, if we have new customers, we're going to have new facility fees and things of that nature to help pay for it too.
If I could have the leniency to see if Mr. Frank would like to come forward.
That's fine.
And tell us what
Yeah.
his figures have shown.
Mr. Chair and board members, I'm sorry I don't have any documents with me. I don't have any numbers right in front of me. We did cover this at the last PSA meeting. Our current rate is $6.80 per 1,000 gallons. This last year we had considered a rate increase, but we were holding off for the jointer because we knew there would be rate increases associated with that. I'm glad to try to answer any questions, but I'm doing it from memory, so please don't hold me to the exact dollar or penny.
At the end of 10 years, what do you think that we would be paying?
I believe when we looked at it, we were just at our rates, were well over $10 to $12 per thousand.
It's a
But
look.
there are some factors that was considering minimal growth, and some of the projects we're looking at, we know that there's going to be infrastructure costs. We don't know if we're going to be recouping any of that through developers. So we could have some monies coming back in from developers that would be rolled into these projects, and hopefully would be reducing the overall amount of money we would have to borrow and pay debt service on.
Mr. Chairman and Mr. Creed, I do have that worksheet, Bob, that you prepared. And right now, $6.80 is the rate. We projected out to 2025, assuming about a 2% annual rate increase in the cost of the wholesale water from the authority, and then about every second or third year, a 3% operational cost increase for the PSA. And assuming no growth, the rate goes from $6.80 currently to $11.68 in 2025. So that's about a little less than a $5 per thousand increase. But, and you did note that assumes that's assuming no growth in the system, and it's also assuming no fees from developers for capacity fees or anything like that. That's if we keep the static number of customers we have now.
And the other thing, some of that does not include some of the PSA infrastructure costs upgrading.
That's
There's
true.
a lot of uncertainty going forward.
Right. There's a lot of
What we're trying to do is looking at a crystal ball, and we doing the best we can, and realize that as we move forward, we'll get better information and better numbers.
Because we're turning over certain lines, correct, the PSA lines to the authority, that means we do not have to maintain those lines, which would hopefully cut down some of our costs.
It will some, but we're still paying debt service. We're still paying for that pipeline. So
Right, we're still paying it off, but we won't have to maintain it in 20 years when it's got to be replaced. That's not our problem. It's the water authority's
true.
problem.
And it's a newer line. They have a useful life, hopefully of at least 50 years. I believe that line's about 10 years old. Our maintenance on it right now is very minimal because it is a good line, but as we move forward in time, of course, our maintenance will increase. But at what point, we don't know, and what cost, we don't know.
Now, maybe we can discuss this. We talked about some of the major transmission lines that are being done through Vicar. It was the one I was talking about. Do you foresee us getting a fair amount of customers as a result of that, having that water being brought through the middle of the county like that?
I think in that area, and correct me if I'm wrong, Craig would probably know better, is that's a area zoned for limited growth.
Right.
And so for it to be developed, it had to be rezoned. There were concerns in the Joinder study that were identified in moving pipelines through resource stewardship areas, whether or not we'd be able to even allow connections. So take a rezoning, but one of the things you do find is when you put a pipeline through an area, a lot of times you get growth.
Anybody else?
No, I just think that's a good, that wasn't as much as what I had recalled. I don't know where I was getting $28 from, but that was somewhere.
Well, it may be if you're applying that to a 5,000 or 6,000 gallons of usage, it would be an increase, but
Even on the low side, I think our average use is about 3,000 to 4,000 gallons, so 11, we're looking probably double that now for the actual monthly bill to our customers.
It's about $45 a month for water and light sign, so it goes to about $90 to $100 for water and sewage a month.
it'd definitely be an increase.
So it's considerable. It's not as bad as I had was somehow thinking it was, but it's still a lot of bucks for water and sewage when you start, because even in 10 years down the road, even the sewage is going to have charges on it, and they're going to be some pretty good ones. So that's where we're at.
Anybody else? Thank you, Bob.
Yes, Bob.
And seeing nobody else, I will close this public hearing. Next item is new business.
No.
I'm sorry. Next item is addendums. We don't have an addendum, I don't believe.
Still got to do public address.
Public address. Jim, stop rolling your thing. We've got 2 people signed up for public address. The first one is Roy Musselman. If you'll come forward, please, and state your name and address. And you have 5 minutes.
Good evening, board members. I want to thank you for the time. My name is Ray Musselman, and I live at 206 Hickok Street here in town. And the reason I'm here tonight is maybe it's not appropriate or not. What? No, I'm sorry, tongue-tied. The reason I'm here is I'm asking for your help, not for me, but for my grandchildren and the children of Montgomery County that's been affected by the school bus stops. And I guess maybe this is an unusual request, and maybe it's something that maybe I shouldn't be asking y'all for. But I was asking your help to see if we can have the funds to reinstate all the bus stops that are affected by this, and instead of having my grandchildren and the children of Montgomery County to walk up to a half a mile in streets that are not lit, no sidewalks, and no shelter for them. And that's the reason I'm here. And like I said, maybe it's an unusual request, but I'm just asking for y'all's help if we can fund the money to the Montgomery County School Board Transportation for the sole use of reinstating of the school bus stops as they've been in the past years. I look at this and I can see, I feel like that history is going to repeat itself. And I'll be real quick with a true story. When you mentioned Vicar, I used to live in Vicar when I was in school and young, and I went to Bellevue, and I lived on top of the hill in Vicar. And we used to have to walk down the hill, cross the tracks to meet the bus. And my parents and the parents of other children went to the school board and asked for them to have the bus come across the tracks and come up the hill to pick us up, which their request was denied. Later on that year, as the children were getting off the bus after school, one of my schoolmates, a friend, was struck and killed by a train crossing the tracks. And then shortly after that, the school buses were allowed to go up the hill and pick us up. So looking at this, I'm asking requests to help us get this resolved, because I really hate to think that a child was either lost or damaged or scarred for life over over a low amount of money of $50,000. But I hope y'all can help us out and get this back resolved for the school board and help us out with that. And I apologize for being stuttering and not loose of words.
You're fine.
I usually don't get in front of the public, and this is the first time I've been to a board meeting, I'm ashamed to say, but I will be coming back to more. But your help would be greatly appreciated if we could fund that money to the school board to reinstate all of the bus stops. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Musselman. Our second speaker is Shauna Hall.
My name is Shauna Hall. I live at 1465 Westview Drive. I'm a mother, and I'm here also about the school board and the bus stops. I was told by Mrs. Blackburn that she could not change my bus stop for my kids. I have two kids, one in the middle school, one in the elementary. They'll both catch the bus at different times. She told me that it could not be changed because of budget cuts, the $50,000. So I was one of the 200 and some bus stops that were changed. And I'm asking you to help us to see if we can get it changed back. Currently, I had to put my elementary child back into daycare because my older child used to get him off the bus, which I don't like the bus stop, and I cannot have her go back up to the stop sign where they have to catch the bus and get off the bus. So it puts her at harm again, and I'm just not going to do that. So I just don't think that's right. And I'm just asking for your help to see if you can help the school transportation, give them money to provide their bus stops like they've been for the past 3 years. My daughter has to catch the bus before 7 o'clock in the morning. We live in the county. We live in Montgomery County. There is no street lights. I'm not asking for sidewalks or any of that. And we live in a cul-de-sac, and I believe that whoever lives in the cul-de-sac and the dead-end streets are the ones that are being punished. And it's not my fault. Well, it's my fault, I guess, where we live, but we are the ones being punished because they have to walk up to one of the main streets to catch the bus. Even my elementary student that I have that's going to Christiansburg Elementary School, he has to walk up to the stop sign and back down where he can't even see the house. He can't even see if cars are in the road or anything, which is the same with my daughter. So I'm just here and I know that there's plenty other mothers out there in the world that's having the same concerns and wondering what to do. And I'm just seeing if you guys can help us for the health and safety of my children and everybody else's in the town of Christiansburg that's going to public schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. There's nobody else signed up for this public hearing or for this public address, but if anybody else would like to come and speak to the board, please come forward and state your name and address. And seeing no one, we will close the public address. Next item is addendum, which we have none.
Sure.
Next item is consent agenda. Do I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
Yeah, we're done. Roll call, please.
Ms. Perkins? Aye. Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mr. Tuck?
Aye.
Mr. Gabriel?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman?
Aye.
We have all ayes. Consent agenda is adopted.
Okay. The next item is new business. And it's Economic Development Authority issuance of revenue bonds for Warm Hearth. Do I have
Marty's.
Marty?
Yes, Mr. Chair, what's before you is a resolution asking the board to approve the issuance of revenue bonds by the EDA of Montgomery County for Warm And this is a refunding request by Warm They currently have bonds that they've already been issued by the EDA, and they've gone back to the EDA asking for up to $11 million to refund their current bonds. And the EDA has approved that, and the EDA asked that this board approve the EDA issue, which is required by law. make it clear that these bonds, that there's no debt or legal obligation on the part of the county or the Economic Development Authority or the Commonwealth of Virginia. The only ones who are on the hook to pay these bonds is Walmart. So Walmart is eligible to get revenue bonds issued by the EDA because they are a 501c3 nonprofit organization. And, so that's one of the reasons they come through the EDA, because they get a little bit cheaper financing through them. And what happens is it goes through the EDA. The EDA is just a facility or a facilitator. The money is actually issued by a bank, or bonds are actually issued, investors pay. So the EDA doesn't itself give the money, it's just a facilitating vehicle that's provided by state law. The other thing the resolution is asking you to approve is to allow Gregg County to issue some money as well for Walmart. And the reason, if I'm correct, is the reason behind that is Walmart's seeking what's called tax-exempt bonds, which means the bonds, when someone buys those bonds and invests in those, any money they make on that investment is tax-exempt. So it's a way to get people to buy those bonds. Only certain issuance under revenue code, under the federal revenue code are eligible, and Walmart is eligible. But we can only issue up to $10 million a year in Montgomery County under the revenue code, and they need, I think, up to $11 million, so, or any change approximately. So Gregg County has agreed to issue the other amount, but because Gregg County is issuing EDA financing for a project that's being built or refinanced in Montgomery County, we, or the Board of Supervisors, have to authorize or approve that. So this resolution not only authorizes the EDA to issue the refunded bonds, it also says it's okay for Gregg County to also issue some money. The money was used previously for a project. I think they did a nursing center. And so the money was invested in Montgomery County back when they did the project. It was a approximate 64,000 square foot, 120 bed nursing and assisted living facility where they used the original money for. Like I said, the EDA originally financed that, and now they're just coming back because of the interest rates being so low to refinance it. So I think Walmart's here to any questions about the project, but I don't see any problem with the board approving the resolutions.
Any questions of the board?
I just have one question. I have two individuals who I'm conservative for who are at Warm Hearth. Do I have any conflict? I didn't think about that when it was on the agenda, but I just wanted to disclose.
Okay, do I have a motion, please?
Move approval.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I'd like to make a comment, please. I have no problem whatsoever, and I would be delighted to vote for this issue, but because of other concerns, I think it would be inappropriate for me to do so, so I will abstain when the vote comes. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Roll call, please.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mr. Tuck?
Aye.
Mr. Gabriel?
Aye.
Mr. Craig?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman?
Aye.
We have all ayes with one abstention.
And I do abstain. You send you pass it on.
Okay, the next item is a resolution declaring the method of reimbursement for state budget cuts. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion?
So this is the part where the state gives us money and then we give it back?
Well,
Is that right?
there's one of two ways you can do it. The state gives us money and we give it back, or we can just elect, as we're doing in this resolution, just to say, just keep it, because we know you're going to have it back anyway. So
Fair enough.
in a lot of communities, they're now calling this the local aid to state government. So that's what that is, yes, sir.
Okay. Any other comments? Roll call, please.
Mr. Tuck?
Aye.
Mr. Gabriel?
Aye.
Mr. Craig?
Aye.
Ms. Perkins?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman?
Aye.
I have all ayes, motion's passed.
But they did have a budget surplus, by the way.
All right, the next item is declaration of local emergency derecho storm.
Derecho. That's a new word we've learned, the derecho storm. Yes, sir. We did, and I'll just briefly mention to the board, back on June 29th or 30th when we had the windstorm, I do have authorization as county administrator to declare a local emergency due to the damage and power outages, which we did, and that immediately opens us up for a whole host of aid from the state should we need it. We were very fortunate in that we did not have to call on state resources for that event, but anytime I and/or the Emergency Services Coordinator declared a state of emergency, we later have to ask the board to ratify that, and that's what this is. And also I want to mention that Delegate Yost's office mentioned to me this week in an email that we have now made the eligibility list for FEMA relief, but Neil Turner, who's out with a hip replacement, has not been able to confirm that for me yet. So I think the answer to a question several weeks ago is we're now on the list, but I haven't seen official confirmation of that yet.
Do I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Gabriel?
Aye.
Mr. Craig?
Aye.
Ms. Perkins?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mr. Tuck?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman?
Aye.
We have all ayes.
And the next item is a work session. Do I have a motion to go into work session?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Mr. Craig?
Aye.
Ms. Perkins?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mr. Tuck?
Aye.
Mr. Gabriel?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman?
Aye.
All ayes, we're now in work session.
And work session, the first topic is FY12 carryover funds, and
We're all
Mr.
looking at
Magruder.
Mark, so I guess it's Mark.
Mr. Magruder.
The only time I ever see Mark wear suits when he comes before the board. That's a good looking suit,
Well,
Mark.
I used to wear one every day, and then, people got on my case about it being too formal.
No, that's a good idea.
All right, so tonight I want to talk to you a little bit about our fiscal year 12 revenue collection, and then I'm going to do about half the presentation, and then Angie Hill, our finance director, will talk to you about our cash position. I'll talk a little bit about our revenue highlights, but as we've talked about in the past, county revenue falls into two different categories, undesignated and designated. The difference is basically, whether or not there's a restriction on the money. The undesignated revenue is unrestricted, meaning you can pretty much use that money for just about any purpose. The designated revenue, on the other hand, is restricted revenues. It's earmarked for a specific purpose, and you have to use it for that purpose. The undesignated portion is the bulk of your county revenue. It makes up about $85 million. And the designated portion is much smaller. It's about $16 million. But if we look at our total revenue collections for the year, we actually ended up within 1.63% of our total general fund budget. And that was after the windfall. I'll talk a little bit in more detail about the windfall in a few minutes. But we were within 1.63% of our total collection. The designated portion, again, that's a smaller portion, $16 million. We missed those estimates by $185,000. In reality, we didn't necessarily not get that money. It's a timing issue of we appropriate the money up front and then we collect that money over time. And so anytime that collection occurs across a fiscal year, we'll have the appropriation in place, but we may not pick up the actual revenue until the year closes. And so it's not that we're not going to get that money, it's just that we haven't received it at the close of the year. Our undesignated revenues, which is that portion of the money that you have the most control over, after we adjust for the windfall, we exceeded estimates by $1.75 million. or basically 2.2% of the total undesignated portion of the general fund budget. And basically there were a few categories in which we exceeded our revenue estimates, but the good part about this was that we knew this early on when we were building the fiscal year 13 budget, so we had an opportunity to program that money in for the fiscal year 13 budget, which helped to alleviate any additional tax increase that was needed in order to cover our debt, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But basically, we had an increase in motor vehicle valuation on the personal property book. That accounted for about $350,000. We had additional delinquent property tax collections of about $500,000. Sales and use tax collections of about $500,000. Public Service Corporation revenues, which are set by the state, of about $200,000. And then we had some prepaid taxes of about $200,000. The next chart actually shows the revenue collections by broad category. Again, you can see the undesignated, the designated, and our grants, and you can see the breakdown. Now, these numbers include the windfall amount, and the windfall essentially is additional revenue collected on the second payment due to a tax rate increase. And the reason we call it a windfall is because at the time that we set the revenue projections, we don't know whether or not you're going to increase the tax rate. And so therefore, that additional revenue is not in the projection. And so when the tax rate is increased, we get additional revenue on the second payment, and that is a windfall. And so in order to show an accurate reflection of how we did to our revenue estimates, you have to pull that dollar amount out to show, okay, what would have happened if we hadn't had the tax rate increase? What revenue would we have collected? And how does that compare to the estimate that was actually used to generate that revenue? And as you can see, after we adjust for the windfall, we were within 1.63% of the total revenue estimate. So some conclusions looking forward. We had some increases in motor vehicle and sales tax collections. That's showing positive signs. We're starting to see some recovery. It'll be interesting to see how things play out, but these are positive signs going forward. The good part was we knew about this when we were developing the 13 budget, allowing us to utilize those additional dollars in the 13 budget and then minimize any additional real estate tax rate increase that was needed for debt service. And this concludes my portion. I'll be happy to answer any questions. We also included, normally I show a chart here that has some rather detailed numbers in it. This year we elected not to do that and provide you with a detailed schedule of our actual collection. So if you wanted to look at the individual detail, it's there for you. But I'd be happy to entertain any questions you might have.
Any questions?
I would just make a comment that Mark does an outstanding job on the budget each year, monitoring things through the year, and to wind up the year within 1.63% of the projections, pretty darn good shooting. And I appreciate Mark's efforts on that. It's really a team effort. I think Mark and Angie and Carol get together about once every 2 or 3 weeks and argue about where we are with numbers, but Mark's in charge of making sure we get there, and I appreciate your work, Mark.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. And I guess Angie's next.
The next chart, which is really hard to see on the screen, hopefully you can see it on the handout in front of you, we show you every year at this time when we go over the year-end position, and it starts out with the cash balance as of June 30th. We talk about the cash balance rather than fund balance because fund balance can't all be spent. It includes some accounting adjustments that aren't really relevant in this discussion. And we start with the unaudited balance, and then we go forward from there to show some things that aren't available for some dollars that aren't available to spend at this time. So as you can see, it starts out on the left-hand side of the chart with about $37 million in cash. The next box is amounts that have been designated already. Some amounts have been appropriated by you already for purchase orders and that kind of thing that get carried over that weren't spent in the previous fiscal year. And then we also have 3 items listed at the bottom of that are estimated amounts or recommendations that we are anticipating coming to you in the future, including some items for the schools. The third box is our estimated need for cash flow. Because our major collections of revenue happen twice a year, we have a significant fluctuation in our cash balances, and the way the debt service payments and the other expenditures fall out more evenly throughout the year while the cash payments come in twice a year. That results in us needing to have a fairly large cash balance on hand to cover that. The financial health of the county is really determined based on its operating position, which is comprised of three things. One of them is the county's ability to balance the budget without using fund balance. Another is our ability to maintain reserves for emergencies. And the third is that we have a sufficient cash flow balance that we can survive through the year and meet our cash flow needs as we go along. The way we determine that amount is on the next chart that I'll show you in just a minute, but we look over the past 24 months and see what our actual cash low point was, and that's what we use to set aside for our cash flow reserve. It's also equal to a little less than 3 months of expenditures for the county. The next box, about $3 million, is the number that we have designated for other reserves, and they're listed there for you. Those we've been carrying for several years. Some of them are adjusted, and a couple of them you took action on tonight to increase for various reasons. The next box, the $4 million, is for the windfall. And as Mark talked about earlier, that wasn't planned when we first did the budget, and we knew that we would have that unbudgeted amount of money coming in, so we took that out. We have appropriated that for a few things already, as shown, one-time money for the county and some one-time costs for the schools. There were other recommended uses in the budget process that are shown there as well, but that hasn't been decided. That will have to come to you later. Then we end up with the ending cash available balance of about $5.6 million, and you can see below that we've shown you what the balances were in that same box for the past 3 years, and it does fluctuate from year to year. It's gone up from last year by about $1.5 million, which is the amount that we collected in revenue that Mark spoke about earlier that was not anticipated for various reasons, and we did pick that up in the budget, so those are one-time dollars as well. This chart is the one that I spoke of earlier that shows you the fluctuation in cash from month to month. And you can see that well, this is difficult to see on the screen also, but the low point was $21.2 million, which happened in April of 2011 in this 24-month period. We have low points usually in October and April, around those months, because those are the months that before the tax bills go out and we start collecting on those amounts again.
Okay, any questions, Ms. Hill? Thank you very much, Angie.
Thank you.
We always put together this, for Matt and Chris, we always put together this where is the cash spreadsheet. Basically, when the financial report comes out at the end of the year with the audited financials and the fund balance, it's really kind of confusing to try to explain all the various categories of fund balance, and this is a much simpler way to look at the cash position of the county, and appreciate Angie putting that together.
I have got one question, but this wouldn't be to her. On the one-time school, the $750,000, is that designated money as to where it goes?
Well, that is isn't that the 750 that we did last board meeting for the buses, technology, and...
Yeah, we got the letter from the school board saying this is how they were going to spend it, and then at least we received some assurances that that was exactly how they were going to spend it. Mm-hmm. But that $750,000 has been given to them.
Yeah, I just wondered if there's any change floating around there that would maybe go towards the buses being able to pick up the kids a little quicker, easier.
I don't know. That's what the schools requested, and I don't know if they have any flexibility in that number to do anything.
Anyone else? All right. The next item is tax relief for the elderly and disabled. Ms. Edmonds.
That would be me. I can found it here. tax relief for the elderly and disabled, and each of you should have the presentation if you want to follow along with that at your place. Tonight, we're getting started a little earlier in talking about tax relief for the elderly. Mainly, we just want to share some information with you about how the program's performed within the last year and get some guidance about how we may want to move forward. We're not asking for any decisions tonight, but mainly just to have some discussion and see whether or not you want to consider any changes as we go forward in the future. Just some general background about the program. At one point in time, so the changes in the income limits were gauged to whatever change came through Social Security. And about 4 years ago, the board adopted a policy of increasing the income limits in increments of $5,000 annually, moving toward what was then a state maximum of $50,000. And the state has changed their requirements, the code requirements, and now they allow localities to determine more of what their own program would look like and what limits that you want to set. The 2012 program, which is the current tax year, the income limit for 2012 was set at $50,000, which would have met the goal of achieving the $50,000 state cap limit. And here's just a comparison of how much that changed between 100% relief, 60% relief, and 40% relief when you move that bottom to $50,000 from a cap of $45,000. Asset limits had been based on what the change was in reassessments over the years. And again, the board has moved more aggressively in that, and last year elected again to increase the asset limit from 125 to 150. And this is just a little history on what those limits were set before, the reassessment years, and how they've changed. State code changes, again, as I said, income and asset limits are no longer capped at the state. They've allowed a provision again that deals with if you have joint owners of a property, all of whom are not 65, they allow you some flexibility in how you can design your program around that should you choose to do so. Comparison of how we compare to others, again, I use the 2011 tax rate book, which is the most recent. The 2012 numbers are not out. And this is sort of how Montgomery County compares. In 2011, we were at $45,125, and as you can see, we increased that to $50,000 and $150,000. That's how we compare to some of the localities with similar population. The history of income increases and costs. From 2011 to 2012, the income limit increased about 11%. However, the cost increased 45%. And when we get to the next slide, you'll see a little bit more about why that is, given you had a population of disabled veterans that state law requires are exempt. And that added a different dimension and an increased cost more than I think we expected was going to happen with this particular program. And again, here we are, we've got about a 20% increase in individuals who qualify or had applied and qualified for relief across the board, but if you look at the veterans exemption, there's been a significant increase in that. So close to half of what the total increase is has come from the new disabled veterans category. There's also been some shifting between people who may have gotten 40% now get 60%, and the 60% went up to 100%. As most of you know, both towns offer a tax relief program, and generally the towns in the county have always gotten together and had a similar program. It gets extremely confusing to elderly citizens if they have to have two separate sets of eligibility requirements or 2 or 3 sets of it. So we've always tried to maintain the same limits so that if a person qualifies in Montgomery County, then they share, the Commissioner's Office would share that eligibility with the towns, and we all have a similar type of program. The questions, and I'm not expecting answers to those tonight, but what are the questions that are on the table is, do you want to make any increases to the income limits? I mean, you've pretty much met your goal of the $50,000 that you wanted to reach. Do you want to increase the asset limits? Do you want to consider other changes? And those are the kinds of questions that we're looking for some guidance about if you want us to even pursue any of them. If you do, then we're going to look at discussions with the Commissioner's Office, discussions with the 2 towns, and likely come back to you with some suggestions or some proposals and what changes you might want to make. If you believe that you've achieved your goal and $50,000 is where you want to remain currently and $150,000 in the asset limit, then we stop tonight and leave the program where it is. So at this point, I'll be happy to talk about any items you'd like to list. The time frame is, and that's the reason we're opening the discussion now, is to make sure we've got enough time to have the discussions with the Commissioner's Office and the towns if you want to make changes, to decide what those are, bring them back to the board and have a decision, schedule a public hearing, hold the public hearing, and adopt the ordinance before the end of the year. So at this point,
Carol, can I just ask a clarification? You said that the old state limit was $50,000
yes.
for the relief. Can you just explain, is that based per capita? Is that why you gave the 2011 tax book? And I mean, Roanoke County, Albemarle, for example, and those examples are well above $50,000. So how is if the state cap is 50?
The state cap was $50,000, or you could have use an adjusted gross income if there were. Do you know how they adopted that? I think you had to have a special approval.
And then there was another raise from state adjusted thing, and then there were specific localities that were given to
higher authority.
Okay.
Albemarle was one of those, because I always wondered why they were so much. Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Right, and I think that's probably the reason they changed part of the state. They got so tired of everybody coming back and wanting a special exception, they just let localities make a decision on their own.
Okay, so
and for us, 50 would have been the max.
Yeah.
Okay,
but now those restrictions, as you said, have been lifted.
If you want to go above 50,000, you can.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other?
And it doesn't require any additional adoption on our part.
Yes, you'll have to change your ordinance, have a public hearing. Again, we'd want to talk with the towns about would they support it so it could be a consistent program. And I guess tonight we're just here to find out, do you want us to do that? Do you want to look at some increases, or is 50,000 where you want to be right now?
Can you go back to slide 9? I just wanted to make one point on this slide that the program has definitely provided tax relief, because if you look at that chart from 2009 to 2012, in 2009 the program was $329,000. It almost doubled in by 2012. So the adjustments that you've made have certainly provided a good deal of tax relief. The downside of that, if there is a downside, is if you make further adjustments, it requires more money to fund the tax relief. So,
and as I said, we were somewhat surprised at the cost this year, increasing 45%.
And the towns, I will tell you that both the towns have mentioned, they mirror the county's program, and I think they also saw significant increases in their tax relief, which made them think, well, are we going to keep going up with this, or are we going to cap at a point? So,
look at what we have here, and this is just my opinion, I think we're in pretty fair shape. I don't want to see it go down, because I recall when people, especially elderly people and disabled people, that would comment when we were looking at the school needs. And a lot of times we tell people that, you qualify for relief, you said if the taxes go up here and there, but you qualify and things like this. So I think we've moved into an area at 50 and 150,000 that's, I think we've done well over the past 4 years in addressing our disabled and elderly fixed income people.
Anybody else?
I'd like to see us revisit this. I mean, you're always going to run into a problem in which there's somebody who's just above any of these limits, and I mean that's just an inescapable problem. And one of the things specifically is that the few emails that I got from constituents in my district when we were talking about the budget is it wasn't the income level, it was the assets. And that seems to be, that I think maybe we might want to look at just a little bit closer, because you do have people who've saved a fair amount, and in some ways, they have very limited income, but it's just that border that's pushing them out of the ability to have that relief, which they honestly need because their income is relatively low. So I mean, I would like to see that. I mean, the thing kind of going along what Mr. Meadows was saying though is that any change that we do, I would of course want to see fiscal projections about the impact of that and lost revenue, because if we are going to be losing a lot more than to fund these basic services, we have to balance that.
I understand what you're saying. I just will tell you, it's very difficult to try and project out what the assets might be of people who then may be eligible if you raise it up more, because you don't have any place to get the data from. So we generally do a trend projection. It just went way off the map this year in terms of cost, and I think that has to do with the whole new population that we didn't factor in that we did before. It's not so much the increase in the asset limits or the incomes. It's having a whole new population of veterans in there that we didn't anticipate having that response from at some point. But we'll certainly look at giving it the best we can to come up. I just want to make clear it's hard to come up with that kind of data. You have nowhere to go out there and know what assets people actually have.
No, that makes absolute sense. I mean, an estimate is an estimate. Right. There are all these variables that you just don't know about. So.
Right. Mr. Creed.
Yeah, I just wonder if this is there. I don't think we have a chart here that tells us the number of people that were affected by this, or the percent that qualified for it, however they want to put that. But I know that there's several levels. Once you can qualify, but you won't get it all. And then there's less you make, the more you get. And I just wondered if there was a number of the number of people that it actually serviced.
Okay, on chart 10, page 10, does that come close to what you were?
That helps, yeah.
And that also shows why 2011 and to 2012 jumped like it did, because at the 100% level we went from 541 to 622 that qualified for 100% relief, and then the veterans we went from 28 to 61, and that was just based on past history, that was a huge jump in both those numbers.
Right. And I think that was the goal in raising the limits in many respects, was the people with the lesser income would qualify for more relief when the tax increase came through. So I think it's achieved that goal, but again, we didn't have anything to base a calculation on the disabled veteran population. That one sort of added more than we expected.
Do they have a way of checking it now to see if what they're telling them is true? At one time, you go in and they ask you how much income you had, and you told them, and that was it. I mean, it was was the gospel. You didn't have to go any further. And I just wondered if
Well, I'm going to turn around and hope the commissioner's behind me here somewhere. Ah, she is, and I'm going to defer to her to talk about the processing she uses.
We make them prove their income. We ask for 1099s, W-2s, bank statements, anything that shows their net worth or their income. And we can only hope that they tell us everything.
Yeah, so there's no real checking it.
No.
Yeah.
Well, they give us copies of what.
Sure.
Yeah, but there is not a way to know that they're giving us everything. There just isn't. I've done this for 20 years, and it's always been something that worries me.
Yeah, and I know back several years ago that there were some people that just didn't, they were living in a $500,000 house, and they somehow was getting some relief, and I just didn't never be able to figure out that. But you know, and I understand that you don't have personnel to check
right, and we don't know everybody, you know.
Right.
I mean, people come in and say so-and-so has this, but we don't know them, so we have to take them at their word.
Don't know where their mattress is at.
Right. Right. And they sign a certified statement that what they put in is true to the best of their knowledge.
Yeah.
But we all know how that works.
Well, I think it's like any of these programs. I mean, you're not going to draw the requirements tight enough to be able to rule out every person here and there, because you're not going to hire enough people to be able to do that. You're not going to spend $10 to save a dollar. So I think the Commissioner's Office makes every effort to get as much documentation as possible, but you're right, there's just no way you can have every aspect of every individual. We just make them certify they're telling the truth.
And I understand that. My thinking was, do we have any means of checking on any of them? When we see one that we kind of know, but this is what they put down, there's no real way of going out there and getting that.
We can verify what they put in the,
right,
but we don't know. Like 401ks and IRAs, if they don't tell us that they have that, there's no way that we would even know to go look for it.
Right. Or stocks.
Stocks.
Bonds.
I don't know if stocks would get you too much these days.
Mine sure would.
Might be a loss. So. Okay, any more questions for the Commissioner?
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, what I'm hearing is you would like to see some information about some potential change perhaps in the asset limits. So I think from here what we'll do is get the Commissioner's Office representatives from the towns and meet and talk about, you know, what the potential change could be and what the towns would support and what the Commissioner's Office has seen, and come back to you.
There's also a few people that I know who has qualified for years in their 80s, and they've had so much pride in paying their taxes, they didn't want any relief. But in talking to some of those people, they will be, when it's time to come forward for that relief, they're going to come forward because of all the other inflationary costs and stuff. But there are people out that, some of the people, and some of you guys may know some of these people, and you explain to them about the tax relief, oh no, we don't want no handouts, we take pride in doing this and that, you know. But the husband and the wife live together, both of them on Social Security, and they, you know, don't have two nipples to rub together, but they still love America, they love paying their taxes, and they take pride in doing it. But they approached me a couple years after I talked to them and says, oh, we're going to look into that because the price of oil and you know, and so forth, it's gone up. So we may have a couple people
Yes.
out there that qualify that just hadn't come forward.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you very much, Carol.
you're welcome.
Next item is to go out of work session. Do I have a motion?
Moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Ms. Perkins?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mr. Tuck?
Aye.
Mr. Gabriel?
Aye.
Mr. Creed?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman?
Aye.
All ayes for our work session.
The next item on the agenda is the county attorney's report.
No report, Mr. Chairman.
County administrator.
Mr. Chair, just a couple of things. First, I wanted to thank the board again for their time 2 weeks ago today in work session to work on vision and mission and goals and objectives. We're still in the process of compiling all the information from that day, and I hope to get some information back out to you real soon on that. Also, an update on our folks that have been out because of surgery. Ms. Biggs sent me a note earlier today to please thank you guys again for the beautiful flowers that were sent on behalf of the board, and the staff also sent a nice fruit arrangement from Edible Arrangements, which I think she enjoyed quite a bit, and I know she's feeling better because she's emailing like crazy. So she's sent quite a few emails, and it's good to see. And Mary, if you're watching this, I hope you feel real better real soon. And also Neil Turner, our emergency services coordinator, had hip replacement surgery today, and he's also doing very well. He and I emailed back and forth a couple of times this afternoon, and I think at some point he went to sleep, so I didn't hear from him anymore. But Neil's doing well, and so hopefully that's our share of hips for a little while anyway. One other thing I wanted to pass out for you to look at, we received notice from the state that it's time for us to think about any revenue sharing projects that we may have an interest in for the upcoming year. As you know, for the last couple of years we haven't submitted any projects for consideration for revenue sharing simply because the state has not caught up with the revenue sharing projects that we've approved in prior years. But just wanted to make you aware of this information, and we can talk about this the next couple of meetings if there's any road projects that you think we should consider submitting revenue sharing for. And basically the way that works is if it's a $600,000 project for a particular road in the county, secondary road, the county sets aside $300,000, and then the state matches that with $300,000, and then the state's responsible for doing the work. Again, the challenge of the last couple of years is we've identified a number of projects, set aside funds to take care of those projects, and then the state has just been woefully behind on getting those projects done. So that may be something we want to talk about at an upcoming meeting as well. And that's all I've got for this evening.
All right. Supervisor Creed.
Yeah, and I would, I'm very interested in seeing if there's any funds available to set aside for some projects, because there's definitely some road projects out there that are in bad need of repair. So that's all I have.
Okay. Mr. Gabriel.
Well, I mean, there might be, I mean, we apparently keep having surpluses at the state level, so apparently there's money flowing everywhere that we should be seeing come to the localities anytime soon. Just a couple of things. One, I was fortunate to be invited to the Mount Tabor Urchins meeting to talk to them about some different things, and they're a great, wonderful civic organization, and I went to their fish fry last weekend. Great event for anybody who hasn't been yet. Also, the only other thing I'll have to mention is that I went to the school board meeting last week, and as our two gentlemen and lady who spoke about the school buses, that was kind of the big discussion, is what to do with their carryover fund. And a number of people, I should say, about 7 or 8 people spoke about the reduction in the number of school bus stops, and there's a lot of back and forth with Ms. Blackburn and others talking about their rationale in doing those things and stuff like that. But the reason that I bring it to the board's attention is because that money, if the board decides to reallocate it, will be taken probably out of their the money for their move. And some of the school board were actually thinking of delaying the move into Building C, perhaps even by a year or so, if the money wasn't there. And I want to bring that to the board's attention because I certainly don't want to see an empty building over there for any longer, especially if long-term we have the possibility of cost-saving opportunities by sharing services and things like that. So I think that's something we will probably want to discuss sometime, perhaps not today, but sometime in the future. So I wanted to make sure everyone was aware of that. So, and that's all I have.
Okay. Mr. Tuck.
One, there is still a vacancy on the Planning Commission on District E, and we're going to re-advertise that and looking for good applicants to be able to join us on the Planning Commission. Two, in regards to the issue of joinder, I know that there's been some good discussions about it, but as I said earlier, I believe that that is the best thing for our long-term future, even though as somebody who's got bad water in Walton, and I know that initially I guess the PSA was planning on taking water through Walton, I still think that this is the best thing for the county for the long run. And so that's why I've been in favor of it. I know, and part of it is also, I think that we have to trust the people that were doing the negotiating for us, that they got the best deal that they could, just as each one of the towns and the water authority themselves were trying to get the best deal they could. And so under the circumstances, I believe that this is the best thing for the county, and I trust the people that were doing the negotiations that they were getting us the best possible deal that they could for us as a county.
Okay. Supervisor Brown?
No report.
Supervisor Perkins?
Yes, several things. I would like to echo what Mr. Tuck just said in terms of the joinder study. And that brings me to the next meeting. I don't know if we had planned to have a vote, but on the 27th, and I know that you asked also about a meeting with the school board.
I think we said so.
I will not be here at the next meeting. I have to take my husband to Duke for his cancer checkup, so we have to go that day, and then I'll be gone on the 28th till mid-afternoon, late afternoon, depending on how the checkup goes. So if there were a way that we wouldn't have to necessarily vote the next time. I don't know about Ms. Biggs. I don't know if she'll be here or not, but I would ask just for your consideration on that as you all make your agenda. That would, it's up to you what you do, Mr. Politis, but anyway. I also want to know if the backcountry event is still scheduled for the 24th.
Let me look. I can tell you real quickly.
At 10 o'clock?
28th. It's on a Thursday, Friday.
It's Friday the 24th at 10 a.m.
Okay.
That's still...
I'm checking it.
And Secretary Chang from the governor's office will be here that day.
Right. Also on the 23rd is the sort of ribbon cutting for the Peppers Ferry wastewater treatment facility. I think you all may have gotten
I passed it on.
That.
Mm-hmm.
And
we've got a tour.
I think you passed that on.
Yeah.
The I believe that's everything except that next week I know there will be an assessment going on for the Planning District Commission. There will be a consultant in. I think some of you or most of you have been asked to fill out a survey that's due tomorrow. If you haven't, those of you who've been asked, I don't know how they randomly selected everybody, but if you have, I would ask you to do that. And I know there will be some meetings for that situation. Okay. And my friend and colleague is doing very well. We're all going to have, who was it asked today in the meeting, that whether or not there was a requirement that you have a hip replacement to be here?
I don't want to go through no airport terminals with y'all. Things will be going off.
You're exactly right. It goes off for everything. It doesn't matter what we go through. I think I've even set off the thing at Belks a couple of times. I'm not sure. But at any rate, she is doing well. And I've seen her, and she is very appreciative of the flowers and things.
Okay.
Right. Otherwise, that's it.
And I've got a couple of things. On Friday, we're leaving Thursday evening, Ms. Perkins and Mr. Meadows and myself are going to Richmond to the VACO steering committee meetings. And looking forward to that trip, I think. And also,
they just don't ever have, I'm on the finance committee, and if I just, for one time, if they would hand out good stuff when you go up there, it's always gloom and doom and dismal.
Are you doing the education committee?
Education, yes.
And I'm on agriculture and transportation. So,
and our friend Joe Sheffy's the chair of education now, so he's from the next county chair.
Good.
So.
Also remind everybody again, and I saw the notice for the Pulaski picnic. And kind of nice we got a couple of months to work on this road thing, because Mr. Brew is working with me very closely on our alternative paving project. And if we can get some of that down and tested, we may be able to do a few more miles than we think we can. So that'll be, I'm looking really forward to that. So, and that's all I've got. I call the meeting adjourned.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.